You're listening to the Journey to the Draft podcast.
Welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast. I'm your host, Fran Duffy, and we've got another loaded show here on the Journey to the Draft podcast. First up, we're going to get into Saturday scouting with my friend Ben Fennell to talk about what he saw and really the biggest game of the weekend, one of the best games of the college football weekend. Clemson, North Carolina, the Tar Heels almost pulling off the upset. Ben will tell us why and also preview where he's headed this week for college football. Next up, first, Mr. Relevant of the college football season. I caught up with Reese's Senior Bowl Executive Director Jim Nagy to talk about some of the top seniors and how they've helped their stock in their final season on campus. Next up, we will catch up with Tony Pauline in Draft Buzz, get the latest word on the street around the college football landscape. I will give you my notes on senior cornerback Trayvon Diggs from the University of Alabama, one of my favorite players in the entire draft so far that I've studied, and then we will wrap it up in our draft mailbag. Lot to cover here in today's show. Let's get started here with Saturday Scouting.
It's time for Saturday Scouting.
Well, back for another edition of Saturday Scouting is my friend Ben Fennell. Ben, welcome back.
Always good to be back.
It was another week, and we talk about this. I feel like I've mentioned this a couple times. I know we've talked about it off camera a couple times as well. Look, all college football is good. We haven't had as many slobber knockers, great games, big upsets. It seems like your crew has found your way to get to some of the best games each week, and you almost had a great one. You had a great game, almost had a huge upset this past week.
Yeah, there haven't been a whole lot of those exciting games, but I feel like our crew has cornered the market
Yeah,
on whatever exciting games there have been. The Boise State comeback week 1, double OT, BYU week 2, another overtime game, BYU over USC. Then kind of an average game last week with Michigan State Northwestern, but then we're back. Clemson, North Carolina, first time ever, number 1 team in the nation, defending champions in where were we? Chapel Hill?
Chapel Hill.
Yeah, that place is rocking. And as a TV crew, all we want is a competitive first half. And then the dominant team usually will, kind of pick up from there. It was a lot like the Maryland game we did last year. Maryland, Ohio State. In Maryland. Huge play right off the bat. Got the crowd jazzed up. Got the atmosphere rocking. That was this game. North Carolina scored almost immediately on the opening drive. Big play. That place was rocking. And as it got into the second half, I figured Clemson would dominate, and because they're obviously the better team, more talented team. Then I'm like, you know what? North Carolina, let's do this.
Right.
I'm a little bit selfish at the end of the games. If teams blow another team out, the home team, typically fans will start leaving. That helps traffic to get to the airport. So there's some selfish aspects in that. But as it got down to it, I'm like, all right, let's do this. So exciting game right down to the wire. And I can't fault Mac Brown for wanting to go for it. 2-point conversion. No. You have a chance to steal a game. It is what it is. You're going to steal a game here. If you have a chance to maybe knock off Clemson in the final minute there, going for 2. Questionable play call. I don't know if you go speed option against a team like Clemson with such explosive players that chase plays sideline to sideline and laterally there. But great game, fun game to watch.
So a couple things. Yeah, almost any coach I've ever talked to about this topic will say, if you're the underdog, and not that you look at the spreads and things like that, but if you're going in and you think, hey, look, this team is just better than us, we don't want to extend the game further, let's get out of this, you're going for the win there. Yeah. I mean, that's the scenario. Now, I do wonder, and I'm trying to remember which podcast I heard this on early in the week, but if North Carolina hadn't lost to App State, if they had found a way, I think they lost to Wake Forest early in the year, if they go into that game 4-0, I kind of wonder if the thinking is a little bit different there for Mac Brown. Maybe he says hey, look, we're 4-0, we're undefeated. Let's go to overtime. Let's take Clemson to overtime, and maybe they go for it. Obviously, that's not the case.
I'm sure they would change the perspective on their team and the landscape of the team and whether they're a true contender or non-contender.
You're probably there for a night game as well.
Definitely impressive stealing that game from South Carolina in the opener.
Yep.
There's some magic going on. There's some juice. I don't know if the team's going to take off this year, but they're on the right trajectory, and I think Mac Brown's got a little extra juice in the building, new life, and new old life, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I went into the weekend 3 games. Your game I was excited about. Friday night, Penn State, Maryland. You mentioned that Maryland-Ohio State game. I was kind of hoping for something similar in this one. Good. I'm going to sit down Friday night. I'm going to watch this game. Blowout. Yeah. I was off it by mid-second quarter. I'm watching Handmaid's Tale or something. And then Saturday night, I'm like, all right, well, college game days. They're in Nebraska. Let's watch Ohio State, Nebraska. off by second quarter. I'm watching Utah State versus Colorado State in the rain. I got Ike Reese making fun of me on Tuesday morning. Why would you watch that game on a Saturday? What are you doing with your life? But I'll give you my thoughts on that game later in the show. All right. Game ball, because there's a lot of ways you can go with this. Where'd you go here with the North Carolina Clemson?
So I wanted to give it to Isaiah Simmons. He had 10 tackles. He had 5 solo, 2.5 tackles for loss, a PBU, a sack where he absolutely trucked the running back. But you got to give it to this North Carolina defense.
Have to.
Man, holding Trevor Lawrence to 200 whatever yards passing.
Yep.
Hold on, let me get that.
You got the numbers. Yep.
18 of 30 for 206. Absolutely un-Trevor Lawrence-like game.
Yep.
And it starts with Chaz Surratt, the former quarterback turned linebacker for North Carolina. And, man, they just got after Lawrence with pressures on third down, forced him off his spot, forced him into errant throws. Good pressure schemes, good tackling as well.
A lot of really good stuff from that defense.
No question. And the second they got their athletes in space, man, they wrangled those guys. They didn't allow a lot of yards after catch. So I wanted to give it to Simmons, but I got to give my hats off to this North Carolina defense.
Did Surratt just make the change?
He did this year, yep. We did a North Carolina game 2 years ago.
Okay.
One of the openers against Louisville and Lamar Jackson. Chaz Surratt was the starting quarterback.
Nice.
I think last year things didn't go as planned at quarterback and eventually moved over to the defensive side of the ball with this true freshman, Sam Howell. And Chaz Surratt, his brother is Sage Surratt, turning heads at Wake Forest right now.
Got it. Okay.
Very prolific high school recruit, was actually in the North Carolina State Player of the Year in football and basketball. Could have gone anywhere D1 in either sport from what I hear. But wanted to stay home there in North Carolina. But really, really talented athlete. He's like 6'3", 215, perfect. Size, speed, athleticism for a receiver. Yep.
Take me through. Let's kind of put a ribbon on our discussion. If you're just listening to this episode and you didn't catch last week's show, we had a really fun talk about Isaiah Simmons and overhang defenders and how they translate to the NFL. Having seen him now up close, what are your parting thoughts on Isaiah Simmons?
I have no idea. I don't know.
So I sent you a text. It was the early third quarter, I think, and Simmons came off the edge for a sack off a blitz. And I texted you. I said, Isaiah Simmons, pass rusher.
He blasted the running back and put him on his butt. And then it's like, oh, maybe he is a pass rusher. And then he turned and ran down the seam with the tight end. Maybe he is a linebacker that could turn and run. And he had a play kind of in zone coverage where he got his hands up in the passing lane. And that was a really nice play. Made a bunch of plays, sideline to sideline, out to the numbers, in the alley. And he's my off-the-bus guy, so let's just get right to it.
Yeah, that's a good point, yes.
I'm sitting there watching the linebacking unit, and he's warming up with the linebackers pregame.
Yeah, okay.
And
so
he is every bit the part of a linebacker. This kid is a tank of a human being.
Yeah.
He's every bit of 6'4". He's tall. He's broad. He's got long arms. But he's not a defensive back. He's not like skinny. These arms are rocked up, jacked up. He's a really good-looking player. I don't know what he is at this point. He's a football player. You got to have a plan if you get him, or if you want to really scout him and consider him. You need to have a fit, a role. Don't just say, let me get this guy and be excited to implement him anywhere and, have a mindset and a skill set and a responsibility in mind with these players. Otherwise, you're going to get a player that can do a lot of things for you and you're not putting them in a position to be successful.
All right. So, number one, just talking about it, it makes me feel like it's almost like you're watching a shootout, unfold on a football field, and it's like, all right, well, whoever gets the ball last wins. I feel like watching Simmons, it's like, all right, whatever he is like the last big thing he does on film, that's where I'm going to imagine him playing. Let me ask you this, though, and you can't say his versatility. You haven't studied him fully yet, obviously. But after seeing him live and, doing a little bit of background work on him leading up to the game, what's the number one thing that you think he's got in his bag that translates to the NFL? Like the one thing you definitely, all right, this is what he can hang his hat on. Like, can he be a matchup guy on tight end? Can he set the edge? Can he what is like that one thing that you think all right, this is what he's got?
Somewhere between being a matchup player, and that's creating matchups and pressure schemes, attacking protections, tight ends, running backs, and also matchup schemes and coverage, the ability to guard smaller slot receivers, bigger slot receivers, tight ends.
Yep.
And then it's just somewhere between that and his ability to play in space.
Right.
And to read and react things, sideline to sideline speed, triggering down hills, huge long arms, great tackling range and radius as well.
Yep.
And I said last week, I just think he's the new age nickel.
Yeah.
We can't envision these nickels and being 5'9", 175, 180, the small corner. No, that guy's now a run fit. He's now a blitzer. He now has to contend with these larger slot receivers around the NFL. that position is definitely evolving into more of a third safety than the third corner.
Sure.
And I think he's just fitting that kind of dynamic hybrid role of that position.
It's going to be a fascinating case study that I'm excited to kind of dip in and get to watch this guy if he does declare for the 2020 draft. All right, so he's your off the bus guy. Give me your one play takeaway here. What's the one thing that you're taking away from this game?
So I had a couple plays of Travis Etienne noted. He didn't have a great game. He had a fumble going to the ground. He looked pretty bad in pass pro on a couple plays.
Yep.
So I didn't know if I wanted to make this an Etienne, and he kind of showed us the snapshot of the issues.
Yep.
But then I said, let's keep it positive. T. Higgins, his ability to play the ball in the air.
He had a couple really nice ones.
He had a couple down the rail, nice back shoulders.
Yeah.
He just is a long, tall-bodied receiver that attacks the ball really well with the long arms. Man, corners have no shot in playing the ball with the way he puts himself between the corner and the ball, the way he times his jumps, his ability to adjust, the way he catches away from his frame. Man, these corners are literally 2 yards from being able to contend with the pass with the way he opens up and times those balls. And then the game-winning touchdown, because North Carolina didn't get the two-point conversion, was a seam back shoulder.
Yep.
A little bit different going down the middle of the field there. But once again, timed it really well, put his body between the corner and the ball. And, he just smaller corners just cannot attack that catch point with the size of this kid.
So did you get to look at him up close on the field?
I did.
What's he look like personally?
Well, I tweeted out before the game, just watching Clemson's receiving core is the highlight of my season so far. Just watching them in T-shirts and their little wide receiver U T-shirts, and to look at Amari Rodgers, who is different than everybody else. He's a running back body.
Yep.
And first of all, he came back from an ACL tear in 155 days.
Yeah, that's sickening. Yeah,
Crazy. The kind of standard time frame to recover from injuries these days is completely being changed.
Yes,
there is no more standard time set.
It feels like in college too. You're seeing, like, I know LSU's had guys that have turned around really quickly. Alabama's had a couple guys that have turned around really quickly. You're starting to see that more in college.
Yeah, and I don't know what's allowed in injury recovery and stem cell platelets and HGH and stuff like that. But anyways, he's the one that looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
But T. Higgins, Justin Ross. And let's just get right into my down-the-road freak shows, because it's this entire Clemson receiver group. They all look the same. And when T. Higgins leaves in a year or two, or this year, they're okay. Justin Ross is right behind him. And when he's gone in a year or two, they got clones of him. And Joseph Nada, Frank Ladson Jr., they're all identical body types. They're all 6'3", 6'4", 210, 215-ish.
So they're bigger guys. They're not just tall and long. They're also well built.
They're not
huge.
Thick. They don't have a whole lot of definition to them. They don't have big bubble butts and rocked up arms. They're all very tall, lanky, fluid type of players. Where you're not into the 6'5" range, where almost that longer body type can be an issue at times.
Right.
They all are, I think, just in that perfect sweet spot of receiver kind of prototype. And just like we were talking about Sage Surratt being 6'3", 210, 215.
Sure.
Dude, he's right in the meat of what you want for a receiver, where the size isn't an issue for either way, being too small. And we've had some conversations about bigger receivers and why they're not winning at the next level.
Right.
And when you get into 6'5", 6'6" receivers, and there's some issues with the body types and allowing corners into your chest and things like that, all these Clemson receivers are right in that cream of the crop for size, in my opinion.
So in training camp, you see the bigger receivers that the Eagles have, the guys like Alshon and JJ Arcega-Whiteside. You've seen what bigger receivers do. These guys move more like, I'm trying to think of like the guys that are just like gliders that fly out. Are they, talk about more about T. Higgins, because he's the guy that I think we're talking about for potentially this draft. Is he a guy that just kind of rolls out, or is he more from the athletic skill set of those guys?
He's a guy that I think is a little bit more fluid and athletic and has a little bit more agility than like an Alshon or a JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Okay.
I know I had just said the one play takeaway was him playing the ball in the air and adjusting and things like that. That's really not his game, though.
Right.
He's not this catch point dominant freak like a Michael Pittman or like Alshon is or JJ was at Stanford.
Right.
He's a guy that can still get open within the route, has the long speed, but is just very good and athletic in adjusting the passes in the air.
Gotcha.
Because of his athleticism and agility and balance, not necessarily because he's this big imposing freak.
So I'm thinking there were some like longer receivers that have that vertical ability in the NFL. You Marquez Valdez-Scantling,
Right.
Tyrell Williams, and now in Oakland. Robbie Anderson with the Jets. Those guys, he's more like that style.
Exactly. I think those three names are perfect. And his ability to adjust in the air is partly because of his athleticism, and it's partly because of their confidence.
Sure.
These guys all play extremely aggressive, and that ball goes up, I'm going to get this thing. I don't care if it's underthrown, overthrown, if I have to open up. So it's not necessarily just because he's big, long, and strong. He has strong hands. He has an aggressive mindset. He's an athletic player with great balance. And there's like 5 or 6 of them on this Clemson team. It's very impressive. Also impressive that Clemson, they're in a small state of South Carolina with another Power 5 team down the street in South Carolina. They do a great job recruiting all over the country. And they really have to kind of pick their battles with where they're getting kids to come in locally and whatnot. If you're in a 200-mile radius,
a lot of people are going there or going into that area. And
yeah, but
players.
you better drive in. Like, we can't kind of waste one of our official visits. We need to kind of save those from the kids out of town, and just a little bit of a different conversation once you look at. And the receiving core is a great example. If you look at their top 5 or 6 receivers, they're from everywhere. You got a kid from California, a kid from New Orleans, a kid from Miami.
And they weren't all 5 stars either. Like, that's the thing, is that Clemson's recruiting, and I don't follow recruiting super, super closely anymore, but it's not like they were, this class was the number 2 class. I mean, they do a really good job of they get good players, obviously, but developing those guys and making sure they reach that ceiling.
And the one thing that really stands out with Clemson players, extremely, extremely high character players.
Right,
And if you just kind of think over the past couple of years,
no question,
there are not a lot of knuckleheads that walk into this program.
Or not a lot of busts. Guys that come from that program
They don't
fall out of the league.
They don't get a lot of kids kind of declaring before they should.
Right.
They get people buying into staying for their 4th and 5th season. They get guys that contribute with the younger players and off the field. Whatever that formula is or the recipe is that Dabo is putting together out there, it's a machine right now, and they're getting some really good players in there, both on and off the field.
Can I say that I'm very impressed with you going through this whole segment talking about these Clemson receivers? You did not one time mention the phrase Petri dish.
We're off the Petri dish this week. we overused
Every week you've said, this guy was made the Petri dish. Anything from Jason Strobridge in this game, the UNC D tackle that you and I...
He was in and out of the lineup. He was questionable, game time decision. I didn't have my eye on him a whole lot because he was kind of in and out. Made a flash play or 2 in the backfield, just like everybody in that front 7 did, but I'll have to go back and really watch
Charlie
the tape.
Heck play at left tackle?
He did, he did. My one kind of thought just about Clemson, just to take a snapshot on why they're struggling right now.
A
couple reasons. I think, first of all, commit to the run game. You have 4 senior offensive linemen. Run the ball, pound the ball. And I just felt like they got out of that, and they relied a little bit too much on passing and using Trevor Lawrence's legs inside and outside of the pocket. And when you look back on their big plays this year, his receivers have bailed him out a ton at the catch point and adjusting the passes that are errantly thrown. I think they need to get back and being a dominant football team in the trenches first and foremost. And if you are a better team than North Carolina and stronger and more dominant, impose your will. Like, I was expecting them to come out in the second half and run it down their throats, and they stepped back and started throwing again. And it was like, you can blow this North Carolina front off the ball if you stick to it and keep running. I don't know if it's partly the style of ETN back there. They do have some younger players that are a little bit more of a between the tackles unit. Or between the tackles runners that I would expect them to kind of work in as the season gets going. But it was just kind of interesting to see the game plan there.
Kirk Herbstreit from ESPN made a great point earlier this week about making that comparison between like Trevor Lawrence and this offense right now to Deshaun Watson and his final year there. They're coming off the success they had the year before, and the offense just didn't quite click, and then they had that loss. And then from there, they were off and running. They kind of wonder, is this the game that kind of serves that purpose, that trampoline, that launching point for them? Now they kind of get their stuff together and move on. But all right, let's get into some of the stuff that I saw from this weekend. Again, I went in really hoping that I would see a good game, either Friday night from Penn State, Maryland, or Ohio State, Nebraska. Just, my first time watching Nebraska. Obviously, they've gotten a lot of preseason hype. Scott Frost is going to have that team going the right way. Not saying they don't. Moment was too big for them. They weren't ready for this kind of beast. And I'll just say game ball really quickly because I was through this game relatively quickly. Game game ball. Jeffrey Okudah, the Ohio State corner, had 2 picks in this game. One, kind of a weird kind of chance throw. He was on his back when he made the play. It was a great play still. But the first interception was really impressive where he undercut the receiver on the move, really read the route well. I'm excited to go back and watch that on film. But based off TV, it looked like a really impressive play. A guy that has gotten a lot of buzz leading into the season, has seemed to follow up on that. I know they've kind of changed what they're doing defensively there. They were primarily a man scheme. They're playing a little bit more zone this year. He's being coached by Jeff Hafley, who is now the co-defensive coordinator there. Hafley was Darrelle Reeves' DB coach at Pitt.
Right.
And he was been in the NFL for a long time. A very good coach. So that secondary, they've got a lot of players there, and this guy Okudah is the one to watch for sure.
Nebraska have a receiver that's interesting. J.D. Spielman, is that?
Yeah, and they tried to get him involved, and it was tough. I mean, it was tough. So they struggled. The only time they got any juice going in that first half, they came out with some option things and doing some different that they hadn't shown on film the rest of this year, and that was when they were able to move the ball, and then they turned it over. I think the moment. We talked a little bit about Adrian Martinez on this podcast, and over the last couple of months, I think the moment was a little too big for him. He was a little shell shocked, I think, overall. One play takeaway isn't necessarily one play, but I'll say this was my first time really kind of digging in and watching J.K. Dobbins live during a game. I haven't studied him on film yet, but this kid is powerful. He's really competitive. He's a fun runner to watch. I'm excited to kind of dig into his film. A junior who obviously can go back to school for another year. Watching him last year, you had other guys, especially in that backfield. You had Mike Weber there. You had Haskins and all the receivers. There's a lot to watch in that Ohio State offense. But Dobbins is an impressive player. I don't know if you've got a feeling on him at all. But and then my down the road freak show. Look, Justin Fields, the quarterback. He's a stud, man. Physically, I mean, everything that happened last year with Georgia was kind of a mess, and the recruitment was a mess, the transfer was a mess. But this kid's athletic. He's got a cannon for an arm. He's slinging it in the offense. Looks confident. He's spreading the ball around. Lots of targets with Mack and KJ Hill and Aller and the Benjamin Victor, Olave. That's a good team. That's got a lot of people. I think they went up to number 1 in the AP poll. That's a really good team at Ohio State. So a team just to watch moving forward. All right, where are you heading this week, man? Let us all know.
So we're off to Lawrence, Kansas this week for a little Big 12
action. Have you
ever
been there?
I have. I did this game 2 years ago, the kind of notorious Baker Mayfield, Kansas game. So Oklahoma, Kansas, this Saturday, 12 noon Eastern on ABC. Interesting game.
You're not going to get that from Jalen Hurts this week, I don't think.
I don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Well, let's start with Oklahoma's defense because we'll talk. We've talked a lot about Jalen Hurts, and I think we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show as well. We know about Jalen Hurts and the story, just an awesome story. But let's talk about some of these other guys who are on this Oklahoma Sooners team, and I want to start with a player that peripherally, has really intrigued me, and that's Kenneth Murray, the linebacker, a junior who flies around, man. You turn Oklahoma on, and whether it's on film or on TV, this guy is tough to miss on film.
Yeah, not only does he stand out with his play, he just stands out with the way he looks. He's an imposing player. He's big. He's broad. He's got a thick upper half. He wears, I think, kind of like a pseudo neck roll, too.
Yeah,
so he just looks like a thumper
Visor
out there.
too, if I remember right.
Yep, so he just looks like a dude. He's got the range, the tackling, the power, the size, and the speed. He's more of a straight line linear player. Once he sees it, though, he blurs across the screen. He'll rush off the edge as well on third down. He has 8 batted passes last year, so he likes to get his hands in the passing lane and kind of time the quarterback's throws as well.
Okay.
Some of the issues, the change of direction.
Okay.
When he has to stop and start and go left and right. Some balance issues at times once he pops and sheds. Sometimes he takes some stumbles and can't stay on his feet. What do you do with him in coverage? He's not really a turn and run linebacker, and that kind of opened up my eyes this week. And what do you do with this player on third down?
Right.
So my study of Kenneth Murray was I just watched all third down plays from Oklahoma. I wanted to see how do they envision him?
Yep.
What are they doing with him? So you see a lot of designated rush ends where he's just going to rush. Last week he had a sack against the left tackle.
He's a bigger kid, right?
He's
like
big.
6'3".
He's 6'3", 243.
That's a big boy, yeah.
So he had a sack against the left tackle, Texas Tech last week. I know it was a screen off to the right-hand side, but the left tackle was just pass setting, so I felt like a clean win. I've seen some QB spies where he really wrangled De'Aaron King week 1 against Houston.
Yep.
And then a couple stunts and loops and games on the line because of that speed and that agility. So it's just interesting to see what they'll do with him on third down and how you're going to envision him to be used at the next level on third down. He looks like a clone of Keith Bulluck. They're both 6'3", 244, 245. Keith Bulluck ran 4.47.
Which back then, I mean,
that's freak show-ish.
Yes.
And Keith Bulluck carved out a nice 12, 15-year career mostly with the Titans, a little bit with the Giants later in his career. But
you weren't seeing 4.47 from linebackers in, what was it, 1998?
No, but I think Murray's going to test like that in the 40. He's a straight line guy that when he gets that 240 hoofing, man, it moves. And he may not look great in the short shuttle and some change of direction stuff, but I think in a linear sense, he's going to be in this kind of 4.47, 4.50 market.
So this isn't... Hearing you talk about him, it almost sounds like, and not the Notre Dame version of this player, but it sounds like the Dallas Cowboys version of Jalen Smith.
A little bit, but he moves like a Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith is very wiry and quick and fluid and like inside, outside, start, stop.
Right.
Like, I don't know if he's that type of guy. He's much more, it's funny you mentioned that, because he's much closer to Van Der Esch.
From a build standpoint, no
he
question.
looks like Van Der Esch,
right?
But when he sees it, he looks like Jalen Smith,
right?
Jalen's much more. I don't know why I have this vision of like almost a spider with Jalen Smith. He has these long, lean legs that he just bends very well. He can hop left, hop right, get in and out of breaks really fast. So a little bit different. It's kind of funny that you mentioned that. I know PFF had compared him to Alec Ogletree.
Okay.
Again, I'm not. Yeah, same kind of linear athlete. But I think he's a much bigger player, like a Keith Bulluck.
All right, well, let's talk about a guy that's playing up in front of Kenneth Murray, and that's Neville Gallimore. I just did my scouting report on him a couple of weeks ago here on the show, so if you missed that, you can go back and get my thoughts on him. I would say I'm a little bit higher than most on Gallimore, but I'm not even like, I'm all the way in, because I want to see growth this year. I haven't watched Oklahoma yet, so I'm excited to see your thoughts after watching him both on film and then also up close this weekend.
Yeah, the way they have him play in the trenches, a lot of head-up kind of alignments.
Yep.
He doesn't get into tons of backfields. I think this guy's going to be a much better pro, and you really have to study him in a vacuum and what he can do. He's got like 15 hurries. He's got like 10 quarterback hits. He's got 1 sack.
Right.
So he's impacting the game in some instances. And I remember last year, my one-play takeaway, I did the...
Don't bring up the hurries and sacks thing with me.
I did the Iowa State game last year. Hakeem Butler had a nice play, caught it over 2 defensive backs.
Yes, correct.
But it was Neville Gallimore that had a nice club rip move right into the quarterback's face, but was just a half step late.
Right, yep.
And that's Neville Gallimore to a T. He's hurrying, he's impacting, he's disrupting. He's just not getting the sack production. But with a lot of those head-up alignments, he has to really kind of work to get off those blocks, to get on a half man, to get up the field, and he's doing a pretty good job doing it. I think he's their best defender right now, most consistent defender. Has really good hand usage. We talked about that first step. He could really shoot across the line of scrimmage. A lot of shed moves like push-pull, hand swipes, swing moves. Good lower half to hold up on double teams. Good athleticism to make plays up and down the line of scrimmage and out to the numbers, even while engaged, which you love to see from trench players. To have that footwork and the strength in concert there. The cons of that, I don't know how much upside he's going to have in the pass game. He's not really a technical pass rusher. Pops up a little bit at the snap, pad level issues. On and off the field quite a bit, so he's not really a full-time player. And the way Oklahoma's blowing people out, they're getting all 100 players off the bench and in the games here. So my comp right now is Malcolm Brown from Texas.
I like that.
Who is with the Patriots and really carved out a nice career after being you didn't really know what he can provide in the NFL level at Texas. And the Patriots saw him as a stout run defender that could collapse some pockets. He's over in New Orleans right now playing pretty well. He's a guy that's been on the freak list 2 years in a row.
Yes.
He ran 4.76 allegedly.
Which is freaky.
For 305 pounds is real freak show. And apparently Kenneth Murray walked in on him squatting 500 pounds 24 times. So he's got some mind-boggling numbers, not to mention his backstory. He's from Canada. Stoops had to brave a blizzard to go recruit him.
Didn't play football until late in
he's
high
one of those
school.
guys. So also down from 330 to 305. So has lightened up a little bit, and we'll see how he looks.
Him and Javon Kinlaw. I think I saw Cole Kublik put out on Twitter that he's down to 296 or 302. Right, he's in that 295 to 305 range. I'm
happy he came back though, because he probably could have came out last year. Kinlaw and Gallimore
both players
came back for their senior years. Hope to see him over at the Senior Bowl.
Those were guys watching in the summer that I'm like, all right, like I'm betting on growth as seniors. If I was watching them and this was the final evaluation, I'd be like, oh, like I'm not quite sure, but another year, like, all right, let's see what you guys can do in the final 12, 13, 14 games. All right. Oklahoma not known for secondary play, but you've got a senior corner that you're.
I haven't studied a whole lot of secondary members in Oklahoma. I think I watched Zach Sanchez a couple years ago.
They had a kid, Jordan Moore, Jordan.
Well, they had Jordan
Thomas.
They had Jordan Evans.
Jordan Evans, yeah.
No, they did have
there was a Jordan corner there like 3 years ago.
Yes,
all the years meshed together now. It could have been like 6 or 7 years ago, but. Take us through.
So Parnell Motley's a senior. He's having a really nice year. He's a right corner, whether it's field or boundary. He's already got 5 PBUs. Through 4 games, he's been targeted 15 times. He's only allowed 2 catches.
That's good.
So he's been locking down one side of the field for him. Last year had 11 PBUs, 3 picks. Was honorable mention All Big 12. The year before, 13 games started, 9 PBUs, 2 picks. A guy that's finding the ball down the field, poking away a lot of passes, and a guy that's experienced. He's been on the field quite a bit. 6 foot, 180, senior here. So interested to see how he looks out there.
Interesting. All right, well, let's go to the Kansas side. I know one player you want to talk about on that offense is Hakeem Adeniji.
Yeah, so he was my preseason sleeper in the Big 12. And after studying his first 4 games this year, I think we need to temper that a little bit.
All right.
If I just had to pick one sleeper offensive player, there's a lot of studs in that conference.
Yes.
But he's worth talking about. He's probably the most intriguing NFL prospect on the Kansas side.
Okay.
That's eligible.
That's eligible for this year, yes.
I know the running back's kind of an interesting story. Yep. So he's a senior. He's a big kid. He's 6'4", 303. He's got 84-inch wingspan. He's a massive player. He's got long, long arms.
Guys like this, even if the film isn't great, get drafted on day 3 every year.
And he's not a rail. He's got that kind of pear body to him. He's got a big bubble butt on him, good-looking lower half. They had him work at center in the offseason in the spring. Eventually settled back in at his left tackle spot. Has played left and right tackle over the last 3 years.
That's a weird guy playing center.
Well, you have a new head coach. Les Miles comes in. He brings a new O-line coach, Luke Meadows, and it's like boggle with these guys.
Like Ethan Pocic at center.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Or Michael Jordan at Ohio State, having a tall guy move inside. But new coaching staffs come in. They're shaking it all up.
Yep, sure.
So they just want to see how he looked. Obviously, carving the way for Puka Williams last year, 1,000 yards rusher. Great grip strength, great torque. Whether that's at the point of attack against D linemen or getting up on linebackers. A lot of times he'll get his long paws on him. He'll beat you to the spot with his long arms and put you down into the ground, which I love to see the finish and using those long arms functionally. Doesn't have a whole lot of strength in his upper body, but the second he starts running his feet and using his arms with the lower body strength, he has the upper body strength is kind of lacking. He has the long arms, doesn't get a whole lot of pop on contact. The second he starts running his feet, though, he's washing people out and using that grip strength and things like that. Pretty good tape against Boston College. I was impressed.
Interesting.
So he's a guy that's a good-looking player and has all the tools and the size, and we'll see how he looks against Oklahoma.
Well, everybody's going to be all eyes on Oklahoma's offense. We mentioned Jalen Hurts. We're going to talk about Jalen Hurts the rest of this episode, so don't want to dive too deep onto his film with you here. I'm excited to get your take after seeing him throw live next week. But a couple of his pass catchers I'd like to discuss. CeeDee Lamb, one of my personal favorite wide receivers in the country, and then Grant Calcaterra, a guy that I know has caught your eye since his freshman year there.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb's a really interesting player. So my comp right now is Chad Johnson. I see the kind of electric releases, in and out of breaks, the route running technician, the double moves, tracking the ball. But they're both kind of frail sizes. They're only about 180, 185 pounds, about 6'2". And that's Chad Johnson to a T there, just being a route running technician there. Explosive player. He's got 16 catches this year, averaging nearly 26 yards a catch. When you go back and start adding up the totals from 2017 on, so the last 3 years, so 17, 18, 19, guys that have had 100 catches and averaging 18 a catch. There's only 4 players. And it's a pretty good list.
Is Hakeem Butler one?
Hakeem Butler's one. He came out last year.
Is
his Oklahoma partner that left.
Marquise Brown.
Yep. And then 2 that are in the Big 12 right now.
2 that are in the Big 12 right now. Tylan Wallace.
And himself.
KJ Hill.
Yep.
Wow.
No, not KJ Hill. CeeDee Lamb.
That's Ohio State.
So it's pretty good company there. Explosive player that wins down the field and has some juice and yak.
He's a guy I love him at the catch point too. I mean, he's he's automatic almost at the catch point. A really, really fun player. Calcaterra.
Yeah, interesting play. He really flashed as a freshman at Mayfield, especially in the red zone.
Right.
And since then, he's just been kind of like slowly phased out. This year, he's only got 4 catches. He's played with Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, constantly changing quarterbacks. Reminds me of a Dennis Pitta. Okay. I wanted to say Tyler Eifert. He's got a little bit more size than that, so kind of a Dennis Pitta player.
Interesting.
But like 2016, 391 snaps, 328 of them were in the slot. Last year, 170 snaps. 153 in the slot.
Where are the other ones at? Are they in line or are they like
they're in line or wing?
Okay.
But he's a slot receiver.
Yeah, right.
He's an oversized receiver playing in the slot there. Good tracking, good back shoulders, good in the red zone, long and athletic. But don't be shy if he doesn't have the production this year.
Yep.
They're throwing the ball to the receivers this year, and Rambo and CeeDee Lamb. They're working the running backs. They have a really nice kind of H-back that replaced Dimitri Flowers. I'm blanking on his name right now. And just to paint the full picture on Kansas's defense, they have a nice safety, Mike Lee, who's a freshman All-American a couple years ago. But their highest-rated defender right now is, I might butcher his name, Bryce Tornadin.
All right, hand over the sheet.
Yeah, give a stab at that name for me there.
Bryce Tornadin. Yeah, sure.
I just got done watching 2 games of him. Yep. I feel like I know his game, but don't know his name. But number one, he's been playing that kind of nickel hybrid role for him. He'll play some back end. He'll play some nickel duty. Reminds me of Mike Hilton with the Steelers from Ole Miss there. Kind of a spark plug nickel. Good in coverage. Loves to get in on run support. Third-year starter, and he's a leader of the team. He's actually from a high school down the street in Lawrence, Kansas, so he's got some local ties to the community there.
Nice.
But good-looking player on tape. He was the one that kind of impressed me, number one.
All right. Well, let me give you 2 matchups. I know I usually give you 1. I'm giving you 2. I'm giving you double dip.
Yeah, what do you
got? Georgia, Tennessee. We got Andrew Thomas at left tackle, arguably the best tackle in the country, arguably, against Darrell Taylor, a player you and I have talked about, debated, discussed, especially early in the season from Tennessee. Going to be a fun matchup. That's
no
one.
Question.
Darrell Taylor, when people go to watch him in the spring, all right, how did he do against Georgia and Andrew Thomas?
Question.
Run game, pass game. That's going to be a
premier
matchup.
There. Yeah.
You're watching that game. That's my focus.
Yep.
And then big one. Look, there's a huge quarterback duo or a quarterback battle, we'll say, in this weekend of college football with Utah State, Jordan Love, LSU, Joe Burrow.
Oh, great matchup.
Those guys going head to head.
I highlighted that matchup in the summer, and we're here already.
Yeah,
we're at LSU, Utah State.
We're here. Yeah. So that's Saturday. All right. Check the watch. Another big one, though. This is a big one for Justin Herbert going against Cal and that defense. Evan Weaver, the linebacker, playing well. Ashton Davis at safety. It's a good secondary. They're playing well. They're playing confident. This is a big one for Justin Herbert. If he can go and have a big game against a defense that's playing very, very well across the board, that speaks to him.
I think Weaver is down 10 or 15 pounds. He's leading the country in run stops. Yep. They have a great-looking secondary out there. I remember I wrote down Cameron Bynum's name watching other receivers in the spring for the draft, Anthony Ratliff-Williams and stuff like that. Cameron Bynum's a nice player. Ashton Davis is a nice player. They have another safety. I think Jalen Hawkins is his name.
Okay.
A lot of interesting players on that Cal defense.
Couple big matchups. There's some good ones here in college football.
And then Jordan Love against, obviously, DBU and LSU out there. He's really struggled to throw the ball down the field this year. I think in his 20-yard passes, he's only like 10 of 33 or 35. Okay. I don't know if it's a combination of his accuracy, having some players on the outside. Obviously,
not a new scheme, but new coaches.
So I just have some concern against LSU, where you have some of the fastest, longest corners in college football. Is he going to have the speed and the size on the outside to get open for him?
Yeah, that's. I watched a little bit of Jordan Love. I'll share that.
Big
with you
game
guys,
for him though, as far as a NFL prospect.
Yes, no question. Well, Ben, we look forward to hearing how your trip out to Lawrence, Kansas goes. I don't know how many of our listeners have ever partaken in that trip, but we'll hear about it next week here on Saturday Scouting. Well, awesome stuff there from Ben, as always, and you can follow him on Twitter just like I do at Ben Fennell _NFL. He's a great resource, not just for all of you out there, but also for me. Helps me out with the Eagle Eye in the Sky columns, the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, and with Eagles Game Plan. Make sure you check that out. If you are an Eagles fan, if you're a Jets fan, if you're just Nexus Nose fan and want to learn more about the game, we dive deep into the tape each and every week on that show. That's going up late Wednesday. Should be out by the time you're listening to this podcast. Eagles Game Plan should be available for you on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. You can always check my Twitter feed at FDuffy3. This week, I broke down some film with Eagles offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland. You do not want to miss that breakdown. All right, let's get into some more football talk. Let's talk with Jim Nagy, the director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. A lot of players we're going to try and cover here in our Mr. Relevant.
It's time for Mr. Relevant.
Well, very happy to be welcomed once again, the executive director for the Reese's Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy. Jim, welcome back to the show. It's been I think this is your third or fourth time here on the program. Really appreciate you spending some time with us here on a Tuesday morning.
No, Fran, thanks for having me. I love coming on.
All right, well, let's get right into it because I want to talk about a bunch of players here with you. My first question is, obviously, everybody wants to know who are the players that have really helped themselves so far in the college football season. It's crazy that we're already approaching the halfway point of the regular season. Pick one guy on offense, in terms of the senior class, a player who's just really kind of helped his stock and helped boost him right into that Senior Bowl discussion, at least in your eyes from a personal standpoint.
Well, I don't want to bend the rules a little bit, but I'll give you two, and they're both at quarterback. That's kind of a cop-out, boring thing. It's quarterback, but Joe Burrow at LSU and Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma have both really, really helped themselves so far. Joe's a guy that when I looked at him over the summer, I liked him. And the more I watched him, the more I liked him. He was one of those guys that kind of grew on me, and then got to meet him at the Manning camp and spend some time around the guy. And again, saw him again at the SEC Media Days. And he's just come out on fire. He's taken his game to the next level. He's definitely got a lot of good players he's working with. But just in terms of, pocket feel and manipulation and accuracy and toughness, I mean, he's making a lot of next-level plays so far this season. And then Jalen Hurts, what he's been able to do, over the last 2 years, really, just from a passing standpoint, he was always a great runner. He was always a dynamic threat with his legs. But you saw it last year in a small sample size at Alabama. So credit Dan Enos on the job he did with him in Tuscaloosa last year, and then credit Jalen for working really hard. But, so far this year for Oklahoma, he just looks like he's got so much command of the offense. I saw Lincoln Riley at the draft last year, and I asked him how Jalen was doing, and he said he was swimming a little bit in the offense, which is understandable for a guy that just shown up on campus. But that's been the biggest surprise to me with Jalen, is just to see how just the command that he has so early in the season. He's been lights out as well. So really, those two guys come to mind.
Yeah, I want to follow up just about Joe Burrow because, a guy that I don't think a lot of, the casual fans knew about Joe Burrow coming into the year. Maybe they kind of knew him a little bit, but, he's now burst into the finalist race for the Heisman campaign. And people are talking about, could he be a first-round pick? Is that the kind of player that we're talking about? You and I know, have both studied the film of what he's done this season. You look at that Texas game, and there's opposite hash throws and tight window passes, and with defenders bearing down. I mean, some of the throws that he's made have been really impressive. But even the layup plays, I mean, his accuracy, his touch, his timing, and rhythm have all been really impressive. He's a guy to me, like if he can go down to Mobile, we've seen that so many times over the years, and I know obviously you've been around it for so long. Guys that can go into Mobile and promote themselves now to, you put that on tape as a senior. Now you put the cherry on top at the Senior Bowl and really just boost yourself into that first round discussion.
Yeah, I think, Fran, he will be in that discussion when it's all said and done. And again, going back to looking at him over the summer, thought more third, fourth round type player with Joe, kind of similar to, Ryan Finley and Jarrett Stidham, guys that were in the game last year. But no, I think he's definitely played his way into that first round consideration. I think by the end of the year, he'll definitely be there. And again, just the type I've tweeted stuff out about this over the summer about Joe, but I think the more time he spends around NFL people, the higher he's going to go because, he's a coach's kid. He's a guy's guy. He's got all those qualities that the NFL guys will like. I mean, he walks in a room, he's got a presence to him. You watch him on the field, you can tell guys love playing with him. He's kind of got that old school, I always think of Jim McMahon. I grew up in the 80s. I love the way Jim McMahon played the position. He's headbutting his linemen and doing all that stuff. And, Joe has that to him. He talks trash on the field. He's got that brashness to him. So I think that if he came down and spent a week in Mobile, around the 900 NFL people that are down here, I think a lot of teams are going to leave Mobile saying we want that guy as our quarterback.
Well, let's go over to the other side of the ball, Jim, and talk about defensively. Same question for you. Who's a player, maybe two, if you want to bend the rules a little bit with this one as well, who's a player that has really helped himself on that side of the ball?
I would say the guy that's taken his game really to the next level is Derek Brown, the defensive tackle from Auburn. You know, it's always cool seeing guys that are, you know, projected to be a first couple round player, and then they come back and really see it pay off. You know, we kind of saw that last year with a couple guys in last year's draft, Josh Allen from Kentucky being one of them. And Derek's really taking his game to the next level. I don't know if you've had the chance to see the Texas A&M game. I mean, he was literally unblockable, and you can't say that very often. I mean, that literally only happens a couple times in a year, every couple of years. I just go back to when Jadeveon Clowney was at South Carolina. When he wanted to take over games, Clowney could literally take over games, and that's not hyperbole. And Derek Brown's performance against Texas A&M was similar. You know, he's just, for a guy his size, to have his initial quickness and get off and be able to get on a blocker's edge and get upfield and disrupt, you know, really on all three downs. He looks like he's on a mission right now. So he's definitely helped himself in this first month of the year.
That's great to hear, because that was actually one of the questions I had about him coming into the season. I haven't watched that A&M game yet. I will put that on my watch list for here soon. But that was one of my questions was, does he have that ability to be able to get after the quarterback and be an ideal three-down player? A guy that he could play three downs, but is he an ideal option? And it sounds like he's really kind of taken his game to the next level in that arena.
Yeah, he has. And again, that's why Senior Bowl week is so big for a lot of these interior players is, you know, they don't get a chance to show that at the college level. So to get them down here in one-on-one, and I'll just go back to my time in Seattle, but when we picked Jaron Reed, you know, the big knock on Jaron was, you know, he couldn't rush the passer. He was a dominant rundown player. But, you know, the way they played their read stance at Alabama, they're playing in that square stance. They're not really even trying to get upfield, you know, on third down. And, you know, they're read and run on their way to the quarterback. And, you know, to see him down here in Mobile, you saw the flashes of what Jaron could do just with his get off and his ability to sink his hands and feet. And he had some pass rush upside to him, and it took him a couple years in Seattle, but you know, last year he came out with double digit sacks. So I think that's this is really a great proving ground for those interior guys, whether it's Derek Brown or Javon Kinlaw at South Carolina or Raekwon Davis at Alabama. I mean, that's going to be my pitch to those three guys is that, you know, everyone knows what you guys can do as rundown players, but you come down here to Mobile in one-on-one, really in a drill that's designed for defensive linemen to win. But if you show these teams a little bit in those drills, you know, now you've really taken yourself from a prospect standpoint to a different level.
So we've talked about Derek Brown, we've talked about Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, three of the biggest names in college football this season. Who's a guy that, I don't want to say from obscurity, we're not going to go completely off the reservation, but someone that's outside of, we'll say, the public eye that has really helped himself and boosted himself into the, you know, squarely into the discussion for the Senior Bowl so far? Well,
Fran, that's a hard one for me because I don't really know what the public eye is.
Sure.
I don't have a very good gauge at that, you know. Like when I did this stuff with ESPN last spring, I couldn't believe we were only talking about, you know, there was like 10 players we talked about for 2 months. So, and I was told that's what the public focuses on. So, I mean, I could probably give you about 90 names right now that I think are good Senior Bowl eligible guys. But, you know, I think that Zach Moss at Utah, the running back, now he's hurt right now. I understand that, but what he did in the first couple games, I mean, I thought Zach was really, really impressive. You know, he's a big 220-pound back, and he runs every bit of that. You know, you want guys to run up to their size, and I think Zach came out of the gate really strong. A guy that popped to me a couple weeks ago when I was in Columbia, South Carolina. I thought Brian Edwards has looked really good on tape early this year, the wide receiver for the Gamecocks. You know, to me, he looks like an NFL wide receiver. He's got the body. He plays physical. He's aggressive. Those are a couple guys on offense. You know, and then defensively, it's another really good edge class. And you know, just in this past weekend, it was really good to see Julian Okwara from Notre Dame. You know, kind of have a breakout week. You know, he was a little quiet statistically the first couple weeks. I saw him play in Athens a couple weeks ago against Georgia. So, you know, to see him come out last week against Virginia and have 3 sacks the other day, and I think he had a fumble recovery. I mean, that was a big time performance. So there's kind of been guys across the board right now. I'm staring at our board at every position. There's guys that have really, kind of elevated themselves this first month of the year. But we'd have to have like a 7-hour podcast to get through all of it.
Were you at was it the Alabama game for Brian Edwards?
Yeah, I saw him the Alabama game. That's right.
Yeah, he was very impressive in that. I mean, you saw the play strength and even a little bit of juice there for the big guy. I thought that was really good to see. The play strength very, very evident with him on film.
Absolutely, no, and I think that's where people are going to discount him. I think he's got more juice than people realize, and like you said, he's so strong. I mean, it took multiple tacklers to get him on the ground in that game, and again, just the aggression that he played with. To me, he's an NFL wideout. You put him in that old school West Coast system and run that dude on slants and some of the underneath stuff. I mean, he's going to be a handful. So no, I like Brian Edwards quite a bit in a really loaded wideout class.
So this class, to me, is really exciting in a number of different positions. And I wanted to ask you, is there a guy that you're like right there on the brink of just jumping all the way in on this player, but maybe you're waiting for, one more matchup this year, or you want to just see this one little thing throughout the course of the rest of the season before you buy all the way in on this player? Is there one guy you could think of that kind of fits that description?
That's a really good question, Fran. I'd say that if we shift over to another really strong position group this year, it's corner. And I would say Bryce Hall would be that guy for Virginia. Bryce, I don't know what it was last year in terms of where he finished in the country. I think it was first or second in PBUs. I think he got his hands on 22 balls or something of that matter. But, he had a big matchup this week against Chase Claypool from Notre Dame. Haven't had a chance to look at that tape yet.
Yep.
But really what I'm looking forward to seeing in on both sides of the ball really is when they play Liberty, when Virginia plays Liberty late November on the 23rd, and see him against Antonio Gandy-Golden from Liberty, who is just he's another guy that's lighting it up this year early in the season. I mean, every week we do a thing on our social media and on our website, kind of stock up for players around the country, and we could put Gandy-Golden on that every week. So that's a matchup I'm really looking forward to. I mean, Bryce isn't going to see a lot of big-bodied receivers like Gandy-Golden in the ACC this year, and the talent like Gandy-Golden. So just looking forward to that matchup. Bryce, we really like Bryce as a player. There's no doubt in our mind, but that's a cool matchup that we're looking forward to.
Yeah, hopefully he can have a repeat performance for what he did last year with Kelvin Harmon, that kind of a big-bodied match. That was a really fun one to watch on film when he played NC State. I'm glad you brought up that cornerback spot because that was a position I actually wanted to ask you about. You've got all these seniors that I think are very, very talented. I mean, you talk about Trayvon Diggs from Alabama, Christian Fulton from LSU. You throw Bryce Hall into the mix, Damon Arnett from Ohio State, Troy Pride Jr. from Notre Dame. Very talented senior group of corners. Based off your background and your personal biases and just the way that you kind of view the position, what works and what's most effective in the NFL, is there one guy that you kind of lean towards, you kind of say, man, like this guy, this is it for today's NFL?
Well, geez, Fran, did you get a picture of our board somehow? Because you just rattled off the top 5 or 6 guys at corner. No, it's a really strong position group. All those guys you mentioned. There's also a couple juniors that we've got confirmed, through our NFL sources and from the schools, that guys that will be graduating in December. So there's a couple other big-time names that are going to be in that group, in Senior Bowl eligible. But really the guy that stands out for me of that group, I know Arnett's playing, his best ball right now for Ohio State. Love Jeff Gladney at TCU. Yep. He's having a great year. But Trayvon Diggs, and again, it's because I've seen Alabama play live 3 times already this year, Duke, South Carolina, and then this past weekend against Ole Miss. But Diggs is a guy, coming from Seattle, big, long body guy, can really, really fly. He's physical. He's physical against the run. He's physical against the pass. And now that he looks healthy, he's a guy that we're really excited about.
Yeah, he's a guy. I did my top 25 players in the country, or top 25 seniors entering the year. This was a few weeks ago, right before the week 1. I had him as a top 5 senior on my board coming into the year. I loved Diggs off 2018 film. Really excited to go back and watch more of him fully healthy over the course of this season. Hopefully it stays that way. I'm a big fan of the way that he plays the game. Jim, one final question for you. We talked a lot in the past, just about how much the Senior Bowl can help these guys and help boost their stock going as we get closer and closer to the draft. And that's an obvious point. My question for you is, who's one player that if you had to pick one to say, man, like this guy has the most earning potential, the most upside, if he comes to Mobile, can really help himself more than anybody? Is there one guy in your mind that kind of fits that with this year's class?
Oh, that's a really good question.
It's loaded, I know.
I would say Justin Herbert, the quarterback from Oregon. For the simple fact, and again, you could go across these positions. And, there's going to be highly rated juniors that don't have the opportunity to come down here in front of 900 NFL people, for a week and really put their best foot forward. So to me, if you're a senior and you have that opportunity, it's huge for you. So, Justin Herbert, knowing that, that Tua's not going to get a chance to come down here because he's a junior, but he's not going to have his diploma in December and be eligible. To me, if you're Justin Herbert and you know that Tua can't come, this is a huge opportunity. There is a redshirt junior quarterback out there that we do have a pretty good beat on that could be a graduate in December. So that would be another name in the mix. But I think Justin coming down here could really cement where he's at. He's got all the tools. He's such a big, powerful thrower. He's a good athlete. Just seeing him live at the Manning camp, I mean, the arm strength it's one thing on tape, but then to see him throw live, it's super impressive. And got a chance to meet him. He's a great young man. And I think us having 4 top 10 quarterbacks in the last 3 years, helps us. It lets these guys know that, hey, I can come to Mobile, and whether I'm a guy in the early second round like Carson Wentz and vault all the way to the number 2 pick, or a Baker Mayfield who's a mid-first rounder and get up to number 1. It just shows how valuable this week in Mobile is, and even last year with Daniel Jones. So I would say Justin of all the players on the board.
I had a feeling you would lean that way, and it's good to hear that Justin Herbert. To me, that would be the guy as well. It makes a lot of sense. Well, Jim, I'm going to let you get back to it. I know you're grinding through film and going through all your contacts around the league. Appreciate the time here on the Journey to the Draft podcast.
Yeah, Fran, thanks for having me on. I really enjoy it. Thanks, man.
Love every time we're able to have Jim on the show. He's just an awesome resource for everybody out there. I think I tweeted this over the weekend. If you are a fan of college football or the NFL draft and you're not following Jim on Twitter, you are doing it wrong, because he does such a great job of bringing not just insight, but also access to some of the top players in the country. Him and his crew are on the road each and every weekend at games, posting videos. Everything that we get from Ben here on Saturday Scouting every week and what he's able to see up close and personal, his team is sharing that content each and every week. So make sure you go follow him on Twitter at Jim Nagy _SB. All right, let's get now into Draft Buzz with Tony Pauline, who, by the way, Eagles play the Jets this week, and Tony is a big Jets guy, lives in New York, covers the Jets, is very close to that organization. So if you want a little bit of a preview for that matchup, make sure you tune into the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. Myself and Greg Cosell dive deep into the tape to break down that Eagles-Jets matchup and preview what to expect here on Sunday. But we will do some ribbing with Tony Pauline next week after that game. First, let's hear from him now in Draft Buzz.
Now it's time for Draft Buzz.
Pleased to welcome back to the show for our Draft Buzz segment, as we do each and every week, one Tony Pauline, draft analyst extraordinaire from the Pro Football Network. Tony, welcome back to the show. Let's get right into it. Let's go right through the grapevine. What's the latest that you're hearing on the newswire here around the college football landscape?
There's a receiver out in the West Coast in the Pac-10 by the name of Isaiah Hodgins from Oregon State, who's building a bit of buzz around him in the scouting community. He was a guy that coming into the season, I graded him as a priority free agent. He's a long guy, goes about 6'3", 205 to 210 pounds. He's a guy who makes a lot of spectacular grabs. He makes a lot of highlight reel grabs that you'll find in on SportsCenter, etc. having a good year thus far. In the 4 games this year, he's posted 33 receptions for 509 yards, already has 6 touchdowns. A year ago, 59 receptions, 876 yards, 5 TDs, so he's improved his game. There's some talk that if he has a good season, he's likely to enter the draft. I do have my concerns, as I think he's one of these guys who's a bigger receiver that lacks the quickness and speed for the next level. But there are some scouts that really like the way he wins out for the contested grab.
So Hodgkins, a guy that has clearly helped himself throughout the course of this season. Who's another player, Tony, who recently has seen his stock go up and is really getting a lot more buzz now than he was just a few weeks ago?
You got to go with Jalen Hurts. And, I understand that the Big 12 defenses are not all that. And they're kind of like sieves that any quarterback can put big numbers to get up against them. But, let's look at the facts. And the last 2 players that were selected with the first picks of the draft were not only from the Big 12, were not only from Oklahoma, but were quarterbacks. And I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be the first pick of the draft, but you cannot deny that this guy has improved his game. He has improved as a passer. He has improved as an NFL prospect. The poise and the patience that he shows in the pocket, his willingness to stay there and buy as much time as necessary, the way he surveys the field, the way he looks off the safety, his decision-making, even his accuracy, and the way he places some of his passes in between defenders into the receiver's hands. I absolutely think that Hurts has definitely put himself into the conversation for the second day of the draft. And really, this is a guy who, as a true freshman, when he was struggling at times at Alabama, people were laughing at him as a college quarterback, never mind, not even considering him as a next-level prospect. But, I don't really care about the stats, but just his improvement on the field as a passer has been really something to watch, really incredible. And it's going to help Jalen Hurts, his draft stock, and I'm sure we're going to see him at the Senior Bowl in January.
Yeah, he certainly is. We talked about him earlier in the show with Ben Fennell as he's getting ready to head out there to Kansas to watch the Sooners take on the Jayhawks. He's operating that offense very, very well. I don't want to talk too much about him because we talked about him earlier in the show, but let's get to the next category here. Small school standout. Who's someone from the lower ranks of college football who we should know from an NFL draft standpoint?
I'm going to go back to another receiver, Josh Pearson from Jacksonville State, 6'3.5", 205 pounds. More of a possession guy, but a guy who's got some really good hands and is a touchdown machine. This past weekend, had 8 receptions for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against Austin Peay. The prior week against North Alabama, 7 receptions, 149 yards for 3 TDs. A year ago, he posted 67 catches for over 1,100 yards with 17 touchdowns. More of a possession receiver, more of a third down, red zone type of guy. I think if he runs well, he can get selected in the late rounds of the draft. But he's one of those players that I think, could surprise people in camp next summer, then make an NFL roster as a 5th wideout.
Yeah, and certainly we see players from the small school ranks go higher and higher as we get through each and every year. One player from outside of the Power 5 that we do expect to go relatively high if he were to enter this draft is Utah State quarterback Jordan Love. Tony, you and I have talked about him a lot. I know he's the focus this week for your matchup of the week.
Yeah, and as you said, we spoke about him. He opened up the season looking relatively well against Wake Forest, who's got some very good defensive prospects on the defensive side of the ball. But this week against LSU, it's a whole other level. I mean, because these are not good prospects. These are outstanding prospects that are going to be top of early first-round picks really through the second round. Grant Delpit, who we've talked about at length, the safety, who I think is a top 15 talent. Christian Fulton, the cornerback, who I think is having a bit of a rough year, but I still think he's going to fit into the top 42. Carrie Vincent, an underclassman cornerback, a little bit small, but a guy who I think is going to be a great nickelback at the next level. Jacob Phillips, the linebacker, is playing out of his mind. Clevon Chazon, who, when he's healthy, is a very good player, but he's struggled with injuries the past couple of years. I mean, basically, Jordan Love is going to be playing as close to an NFL defense as he's going to see this year. And there are going to be a lot of eyes on this game because there are a lot of scouts who believe that Jordan Love is actually the number 1 rated or will be the number 1 rated quarterback if he enters the draft and he continues to progress. But he's got to show poise. He's got to remain patient. He can't do too much, which I think was his downfall in that Wake Forest game. He tried to put too much on his shoulders. And it's understandable because they don't have great targets at Utah State. He's basically, he is the main cog in the offense. And as Jordan Love goes, that's the way the Utah State offense goes. But this is a big-time game, and this is something that if you're a draft fan, if you're, you want to be in the scouting business, or if you just have an interest in a top-rated quarterback, watch this game Saturday because a lot is riding on the line for Jordan Love.
Yeah, and I watched this past Saturday night. They played Colorado State. It was a game that there was delays because of the weather, and so he had to play through the rain. He had a couple turnovers early. He fumbled the football, so he faced some adversity. I liked seeing him go through that adversity. And you talked about people that want to be scouts. We talked with Dan Hatman back in the summer, and he said, I looked for those top prospects. I want to be able to see them perform in a wide variety of circumstances, change the weather, are you on the road, are you at home, good defenses, bad defenses, good performance, bad performance. I thought you saw some adversity there for Jordan Love, and it was good to see him still stand tall. You talked about, that poise and that toughness. I think we saw a little bit of that from Love this past week against Colorado State. All right, my matchup of the week that I'm excited about is going to be Auburn going up against Florida, an SEC matchup. Look at the trenches here. This Florida defensive line, when you talk about Jonathan Greenard, the transfer from Louisville, you have Jabari Zuniga, who plays inside-outside. Zuniga's a guy that I'm a big fan of on film. He attacks the run very, very well. He also can get after the quarterback a little bit. He plays very violent, very urgent off blocks. I like that position versatility. Greenard has really good flexibility, the ability to turn the corner. I'd like to see him get a little bit better with his hands at the top of the rush. That will be something that I'll be interested to watch in this game against Auburn's two tackles, because you've got Prince Tega-Wanogo at left tackle. You've got Jack Driscoll at right tackle. Both guys, I think, are very intriguing. Prince is one of the more athletic tackles in this class, really looks the part. He's got good feet, good knee bend, a really natural mover. Driscoll, a little bit undersized. I would say both guys are a little bit undersized. But Driscoll, man, he plays the position really well. He uses his hands. He's a very smart player. I think both those guys have next-level potential at either tackle or guard. So both guys, I think, are very interesting in this game going up against a very talented Florida defensive front.
Yeah, I like Wanahago. I think he's a bit underrated. I think he's going to end up in the first round if he continues to progress. I think he has a high upside. I think the battle against Greenard is going to be an outstanding one to watch, because Greenard is basically a pure edge rusher. I mean, that's what he does best, and Wanahago is going to really want to shut him down. I also like Driscoll, but I think Driscoll is probably better off at guard at the next level. He's more of a small area guy. He's not the athlete of his teammates. He's probably better. He's more refined, more polished offensive lineman, more NFL ready, though he doesn't have the upside. But he plays a smart and fundamentally sound football. It just doesn't have that tremendous athleticism to be used in a variety of systems. Like you said, it's going to be a good matchup, especially the Greenard-Wanahago matchup, because Greenard can get outside and get around the edge and take those wide angles. We'll see if the Auburn tackle can shut him down.
And then lastly, Tony, let's wrap it up with our mock draft roundup, where this week we're going to go with Benjamin Solak, a friend of the show, over with Bleeding Green Nation, and also with the Draft Network. He put out a most recent mock draft where he has the Eagles selecting 17th overall and taking Ohio State cornerback Jeffrey Okudah. Tony, thoughts on the value there? Obviously, an underclass. We don't know if Okudah is going to enter the draft, but if he were to declare, how do you like the value as we sit here the first week of October?
Yeah, well, I was told, and I think we said this on the podcast, Okudah is very likely to enter. If he remains healthy, he doesn't have any injuries, and he continues to progress, he's going to enter the draft. I think that he could end up being the first cornerback selected somewhere in the top 15. He may not be there with the 17th selection. It's tough to say because Ohio State really hasn't played anybody. And these games have been over so early, and the defense really hasn't been tested. A lot will be told this weekend that when they play against Michigan State, that's got a decent quarterback in Lewerke. They've got some good receivers. So this will be a good game to kind of gauge his progress and whether or not he is really worth all the hype that he's been receiving. But I think if Okudah really plays as is expected, enters the draft as I expect him to, and then tests well, which everyone says he's going to, I think he could end up in the initial 15 selections of next April's draft.
Certainly a very, very talented prospect that we will be talking about for months if he does declare. Well, Tony, really appreciate the time as always here on the Journey to the Draft podcast. We will talk to you next week.
Sounds good.
Get a behind-the-scenes look at life with the Philadelphia Eagles on the Eagles Insider podcast presented by Lincoln Financial Group. From football to pop culture, no topic is off limits with the Eagles Insider, Dave Spadaro. Subscribe today wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll say this again: all the access that Dave is able to get, who he talks to on a weekly basis, and whether it's players, the best players on the team, individual coaches, the head coach, the coordinators, position coaches. He'll talk with Howie Roseman, with Andy Weidel. All kinds of access from the insider, Dave Spadaro. Make sure you check that out over on the Eagles Insider podcast. All right, let's wrap this show up. We're getting close to the end here. My notes on Alabama senior cornerback Trayvon Diggs. It's time for Scouting Report.
Dim those lights. We're headed to the film room for the Scouting Report.
All right, so I've got my notes on Trayvon Diggs, and if you guys remember, right before the season, we did our top 25 seniors. I mentioned it earlier with Jim. Trayvon Diggs was one of my favorite players coming into the season. He is a guy that I am very, very high on at the cornerback spot, playing for Alabama. He was on the Senior Bowl watch list at the end of the season. I'm just going to go through some of my notes, some of the highlights that I've written down. He was a player that some people thought could declare for the 2019 draft. Obviously, he missed most of last season, only played 6 games for Nick Saban. So with that foot injury, decided, you know what, let me come back for another year, put a full season's worth of film on tape as a starter, and come back and see what I've got for 2020. This kid has got lots of talent. He is the younger brother of Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Stefon Diggs, so comes from an athletic family, 4-star recruit, ended up at Alabama because he was recruited by Mike Locksley, now the head coach at Maryland, previously the offensive coordinator at Alabama. He was the one who brought Stefon Diggs to Maryland, kept him in state as a 5-star recruit. So the younger Diggs, Trayvon, ends up at Alabama, starts 6 games last year, missed the rest due to a foot injury. He played all over the field. He played both outside corner spots. He played in the slot. He played inside and dime. Did a lot of different things for Nick Saban in that secondary. So you love that position versatility. Then also played a good mix of both press and off coverage. So you have scheme versatility there as well. Love that for any prospect coming out, especially when you evaluate for players for the whole league like I do, not just for one team. You like to be able to see that scheme versatility, the ability to line up and play for a number of different teams. That can only help a player's stock. This kid's tall and long. He looks the part of the prototype for today's cornerback spot. And to me, he's got all the tools for a top-end corner, somebody who can erase opposing number 1 wide receivers. I remember last year against Ole Miss and that powerful passing attack that they had there with the Rebels. They lined him up one-on-one with DK Metcalf, and he erased DK Metcalf in that game. Any catches Metcalf had were not against Trayvon Diggs, and Metcalf ended up leaving the game with an injury, but Trayvon Diggs was outstanding against one of the most explosive receivers in the country last year in DK Metcalf, so I thought that was a really impressive performance from him last year. As far as positives, this kid's an impressive athlete, the quicks to get in and out of breaks, he's got lateral movement, he's got change of direction, but he's also got top-end speed. He's got the ability to recover and get back in phase, make plays down the field in all areas of the field. He can drop his weight at the top of the route and break with the receiver in man-to-man coverage. I liked his instincts and his feel in man-to-man, and then also show the awareness in zone coverage to break on throws and jump routes, showed the ability to play with feel and really a good understanding of playing in coverage. Really, really impressed with his instincts. Really good play strength, even against bigger receivers. I mentioned what he did against Metcalf, obviously one of the bigger receivers you're going to find both in the NFL and in college football. So his ability to match up pound for pound with any of these receivers was really, really good to see. If he's beaten off the line, he does not panic when he's beaten early, and he's got the ability to find the ball late downfield. I thought he flashed impressive ball skills, the ability to finish at the catch point. His technique wasn't always great as a tackler, but he was more than willing, showed the ability to slip and dip and slip a block on the perimeter, find the ball in the flat and finish. His toughness also showed up as a blitzer. He was a great special teams coverage player and a returner. So you're talking about all the different ways he can help a football team. Defense, number of different positions. Special teams cover guy, return man, did a lot for Alabama leading up to this season. I haven't studied them yet from this year. Excited to really dig deep once they start playing some of those big time receivers in the SEC. But you're talking about a guy from a negative standpoint. The only things that I really saw, his lack of experience did show up at times. I thought he was a little bit loose with his technique in press coverage, maybe a little bit late to turn and run from off. So just from a timing standpoint, I thought there were things to work on, and he can get a little bit grabby at times. But overall, I wrote down this kid's got all the tools of a shutdown corner on the outside. side. If he can continue to improve mentally this fall, there's no reason why he wouldn't be a first-round pick in 2020 and be a long-time starter in the NFL. Could fit in any scheme. Yeah, probably best as a press corner, but he, like I said, with his athletic skill set, with his instincts, his toughness, his competitiveness, his background, I think he's got the ability to play in any scheme in the NFL. So that's how I feel about Trayvon Diggs, one of the top seniors in the country. Let's get now to our last segment of the show. It's time for Draft Mailbag.
Now it's time to hear from you, the fans, in the Draft Mailbag.
All right, so as always, rate, review, subscribe. We're going to say it every single time. For anyone that wants to be able to help support the show, go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, leave us a rating, leave us a comment. If you leave a question, it'll get answered here on the show, and that's exactly what I'm doing now with the Scouts Doubt. The question is, hi, Fran, are there any defensive ends with a top 50 grade in the upcoming draft class that could slide inside to a defensive tackle spot on obvious passing downs like the Eagles tend to do? So, good question. And to me, I look at the senior class. I don't know if there's anybody I would say with a top 50 grade that has that kind of skill set. I would say if there's anybody, maybe Jabari Zuniga from Florida is a player that we've talked about over the last few weeks. He plays a lot inside for the Gators, a guy that can hold up and do a lot of different things for you. He's really good against the run. He's very violent with his hands, can win with speed and with power. So I think when you look at Jabari Zuniga, he'd be a guy a little bit lighter, but I've said in the past, he kind of reminds me of Malik Jackson when Malik Jackson was coming out of Tennessee, and he was a defensive tackle, defensive end hybrid. No one really knew exactly what Malik would be coming out of school with the Volunteers, but has turned into a great interior disruptor. I don't know if Zuniga will quite go down that path, but he's a guy that I think has that position versatility. Bradley Anai from Utah, a guy that I did a scouting report on a couple of weeks ago. I think that he's got that same kind of versatility as well to be able to do some different things for you up front. Marlon Davidson and Khalid Kareem, to a lesser extent, I think they both have the body type to be able to do some different things for you, line up at some different spots on passing downs if you think that they can be an athletic mismatch on the interior against guards and centers. From the underclassmen standpoint, yeah, the two names that stand out are Chase Young, who, if he declares, he's probably going to be a top 5 pick. AJ Epinesa from Iowa. Depending on who you talk to, some people think he could be top 5, top 10. Some people think he's more late teens, early 20s, but both guys have the ability to line up at a number of different positions along the defensive line. I think when you look at Chase Young, he's a better prospect right now in terms of his overall tools, his skill set. Based off what I saw last year as a sophomore, this kid gets off the ball. He's got all the athletic traits you want. Just wanted to see a little bit more nuance, a little bit more tech from a technique standpoint. We talk about pass rush plan all the time. I wanted to see a little bit more from that with Chase Young. Epinesa, that's not a concern. He's got a great pass rush plan, knows how to use his hands, can win in so many different ways. He just isn't quite the athlete that Chase Young is. So you got one who's probably a better player right now, one a little bit of a better prospect, but both players really, really intriguing with what they can be at the next level. And they kind of fit what you're looking for instead of, as a guy that can line up outside on early downs, maybe line up inside and do some different things for you to create matchups on passing down. So great question there from the Scouts Doubt. That's the last question we've got in the queue right now. So if you want your question answered on next week's show, all you have to just go into Apple Podcasts, go into to Stitcher, leave a rating, leave a comment, leave your question in the comment, and we will answer it here on the show. That'll do it. Loaded show, like I said here this week on the Journey to the Draft podcast. For everybody here at the NovaCare Complex, I'm Fran Duffy. We will talk to you here next week.